I'm working on some prep for our steakhouse class tomorrow night, and I thought this might be a good time for us to do a little steak 101. I think I'm going to make this a series, so the video today is going to be about how to pick out a steak, things you want to consider when you pick out a steak. If you're not familiar with me, hey, I'm Baker Betty. I'm a baking educator. I own a recreational baking and cooking school here in Chicago called Betty Chicago. I'm also a trained chef, and I teach savory classes as well. So I don't talk about savory cooking a lot, but let's talk about steak today. So when I pick out a steak, when I go to the grocery store, there are kind of three things that I like to consider, and that is the quality of the meat, the cut of the meat, and the thickness of the meat. So you're going to notice when you buy beef that there are labels. It's going to either say select, choice, or prime, and that is going to tell you the quality of the meat. Okay, so this is a good illustration. The amount of marbling that is in the meat is going to directly relate to the label that it has on it. So select is going to be the lowest quality that we consider for human consumption, and there are lower qualities, but you're not going to see them in the grocery store. They're for like animal feed and stuff, but it's going to have the least amount of marbling, as you can kind of see in this picture. When we go up a step, we're going to go to choice. Choice is going to be a little bit more expensive than select. It's going to have more marbling throughout it. It's going to be a little nicer quality meat. And then prime is going to be your highest quality that you're going to typically see in a grocery store. It's going to have the most marbling, nicest cut of meat, also the most expensive. Honestly, choice is usually a great option. It's usually what I go for, unless there's a good deal on some prime meat. All right, next we're going to consider what cut of steak we want. And this is going to really relate to what you value in a steak. And I think there are kind of three good cuts that are going to make really nice steaks at home. And that is the filet, the ribeye, and the New York strip. So depending on what you value, this can help you decide which one of those you want to cook. If you value a super tender steak, you want the most tenderness out of a steak, then you are going to choose a filet. A filet is going to be the most tender of those three options. However, it is the most mild in flavor compared to the other two. I mean, it's beef. It's going to taste beefy, but it just doesn't have as bold of a flavor, and that's because it also does not have a ton of marbling throughout it. Okay, so a ribeye is going to give us the most bold flavor. It's going to be the most savory, the most umami, but a little bit less tender than a filet, but honestly still very tender. So you kind of get both the best of both worlds with a ribeye. You are going to get still a really tender piece of meat, but you're going to get a ton of flavor. However, something that I think a lot of people don't know about a ribeye, and I think maybe you should know, is that if you like a rare steak, a ribeye is not your best option. If you like a blue steak or a rare steak, I think that you should choose a different cut of meat, like a New York strip. Because if you think about what a ribeye looks like, here, let me find a picture. Okay, the right-hand side in this picture is a ribeye. So if you look at the fat in the ribeye, there's a good amount of fat around the outside, but there's a lot of fat worked through the inside. There's a lot of marbling, and not even just like that really thin marbling, kind of some chunky marbling. And that fat needs to really hit like around 130 degrees Fahrenheit for it to start rendering, which means 130 is like low end of medium rare. So if you want to keep your steak rare, you're not gonna get the benefit of that fat rendering out because you're not hitting that temperature. And it's gonna tend to be a little chewy, a little kind of unappetizing, and you're not getting that flavor that it adds when it renders out. Whereas a New York strip, which is on the left side, it has good marbling, but it has this big fat cap on the outside, so it doesn't have as much kind of throughout the steak. And you can do a sear on that side fat cap to get it really nice and crispy, but if you like a rare steak, it's gonna have a much better texture and, in my opinion, much better flavor if you go New York strip rather than ribeye. My personal opinion. So New York strip is my favorite cut of meat to cook at home. I think it's super bold flavor. It is firmer than the other two, but it's not like tough by any means, especially if you cook it well. And I just think it's more versatile than a ribeye. So that's what I choose to do. That's what we cook here in our Steakhouse Classics class. Our next video, we'll talk about, I was gonna say thickness too. Okay, so the last thing you're gonna consider is thickness. So thickness is going to be how you like your steak cooked. So if you like a super rare steak, you're going to want a thicker piece of meat because you want to try to keep that internal temperature much lower. If you like a more rare steak or a more well-done steak, you can go thinner. I typically try to get steaks that are like at least an inch thick, thicker for, if you want more rare, medium rare. But you can kind of look at that. If you're buying steaks for multiple people, when you're choosing which steak to cook for which person, you're gonna cook the thicker steaks for those who want the lower temperatures, the more rare, and you're gonna cook the thinner steaks for people who like theirs a little more well done. So when I write on our little packaging of our steak how thick they are in centimeters, and then when our guests come, I ask them, how are you gonna wanna cook your steak? And then that helps me determine who I'm gonna give which steak to based on the thickness of the steak. Okay, next video we'll talk about seasoning the steak, kind of getting it prepared for cooking. And then I'll do a video demo of doing like a really simple, really nice steak at home. Okay, bye.